you would refer to rap as the misogynistic, materialistic handmaiden of American capitalism.
Yes.
Explain that.
That's a very, very good, this is one particular article. I think at that point, I felt that rap was being used, or has been used, and is still being used in many ways to not represent the communities that it came from. You know, obviously you have exceptions to that. You have obvious people even today in the mainstream who are exceptions to that. But I think the general rule, and this, I don't think this is controversial, when you look at who owns the distribution channels, when you look at who owns the major record labels, when you look at who's actually controlled the production and the profits of hip hop, it's not been the people from the community that created it. Therefore, hip hop has geared itself, or at least mainstream hip hop, to be consumed by people who are not from those communities. The majority of consumers in the Western world, full stop, are middle class white kids, right? Now, you've had the Public Enemies, but when Public Enemy came out, let's look at the stick they got, the way they were received, even in the UK. If we look at the way the press reacted to Public Enemy, the way they were depicted, the way they were hated against, the way eventually, you know, they were sort of made to seem like, you know, crazy black racist radicals, versus when you rap about murdering other black people, or when you know, play up to some of the other stereotypes, where it's like, yeah, go ahead, get busy. And so I think that in many ways, I think hip hop has been used, and I've seen this effect globally, where, let's contrast it, say, with reggae music, for example, for all reggae music's problems and challenges in so-called sub-Saharan Africa. Reggae music, despite not having the, you know, marketing budgets that hip hop has, is way more popular generally across sub-Saharan Africa. But also it's the message that reggae music conveys and how that has been affecting people's consciousness. Reggae music has maintained its identity as a unapologetically Pan-African form of music. Whereas when we look at the contrary influence, I think hip hop politicized a lot of people, myself included. But I feel at times I despair. I have a yo-yo conversation with myself. When on the one hand, I'm like, rappers should be able to rap whatever the fuck they want to rap about. Negativity is part of reality, which it is. That story should be told. You know, these things go on, that should be there. I think, again, it's about having a kind of round plate. But I don't see the Dead Prezzers of this world during this era that I was writing, the Wu-Tangs of this world in their kind of more radical incarnations. I think a lot of the more politically challenging stuff being given the same level of marketing, the same level of push. And I think that's for obvious reasons. Rap has become, as MK Asante said it, the music that sells other stuff best. So it's not necessarily the music that sells music best, but its association with other products and other branding sells them very well. And it's made a lot of wealthy people. Whether or not it's changed the situation for Black America for the better remains to be seen, and certainly for the world. And that can be true of all art forms. So I think hip hop at its best can challenge power, at its worst it can reinforce the dominant powers that are there.
Well, you went on tour with Nas and Damian Marley.
I did, yeah.
And that was around their
Distant Relatives.
What's the name of that album? Distant Cousins?
Yeah.
You'd mentioned that the Damian Marley out-rapped Nas.
Yeah, I don't want that to seem personal to Nas. I think that what I was trying to point to is that it's interesting, given Jamaica's role in the foundation of hip hop in some ways, that if you rap in a Jamaican accent, it's not considered rapping. And like I said, it wasn't meant as a disrespect to Nas. I think it was meant more as a compliment to Damian, that as an artist, he could be on an album with someone who's unquestionably one of the best rappers of all time and hold his own, if not, you listen to a track like Patience, you listen to certain of those tracks, if not sort of edge it out. And I think that the Americanization of the art of rapping, rhythmically rhyming over the beat of a drum, which is something that's actually been happening in Africa for hundreds of years, but happened in communities in the diaspora for a very long time, is an interesting challenge. For me, someone like Bounty Killer, I look at the amount of songs he had growing up. I would put him in my top 10 MCs of all time, except he's not a hip hop MC. So I think that Damian is someone that is seen traditionally as a singer, I think partly because of his origin and because of who his dad is, but actually as an MC, like, he can hold his own for me with anybody, as I think that album proved.
What do you think was some of the standout moments you had from going on tour with Nas and Damian Marley?
I think the entire show, to be honest with you, because what they did was, which was very clever, they did the best songs from the joint album, then they did both their best individual songs. So you can imagine what a show that was. It's like, Nas has got so much material, Damian's got so much material, and then they did the joint stuff. So I think it was the level of production. There was one particular show in Birmingham. So people in the UK will know this, but Birmingham is the most heavily Jamaican community, probably outside of Jamaica, maybe even more so than certain parts of Brooklyn. Like, it's little Jamaica. All of the black people in Birmingham are from Jamaica almost. And unlike London, Birmingham's much more segregated. So the north of Birmingham is all Jamaican and Pakistani, pretty much. You have some Indian groups there, but it tends to be Jamaican and Pakistani, and it's a big area. There's like 4 main hoods in the north of Birmingham, and it's created an environment that's very tough, but it's also created a certain very Jamaican energy. So doing the Nas and Damian Marley show in Birmingham it was like doing the show in Jamaica. And unfortunately, the doors did get rushed. You know, dudes did rush the doors and come in. They just wanted to see the show. Dudes from the hood was there. The venue isn't that far from the hood. The doors got broke open, but there was no trouble, fortunately. But it was a very rowdy show, and it had a certain energy because of where it was. There were way more Rastas there than there were at any of the other shows. People were openly just smoking weed in the venue. They didn't care. Like, it became very, I don't know, it had that, I don't know how to describe it. That sort of energy that I think is that urgency. It felt like I was going to a show in Jamaica. That's the only thing I can describe it to. When I go to Rebel Salute or when I go to certain shows in Jamaica, there's an energy there that that's very hard to recreate outside of that environment. That particular show in Birmingham felt like that rawness of energy. It almost felt like a ceremony on a plantation before an uprising. That's the level of energy that you had at that particular show. And so I think to go on tour with 2 incredible artists like that and then see them night after night do the show, but then see one particular show play out that way was really interesting.
How did you get on that tour?
I had an agent at the time that was the same agent as Damian's agent. And it's interesting because in the UK I've been around for a while. I mean, I've got a vinyl that I've just released, which is a 10-year anniversary album. It's like 3 tracks from all of my last 6 albums. And I've kind of very consistently done my thing. I've toured with quite a few other big US rappers. And then now, you know, after 10 years of grafting, I've got to a stage. I mean, I've always done my own tours as well, but of course they weren't as big as Nas and Damian Marley's tours. But again, I'm starting to get to a stage now where actually I'm doing much bigger venues in the UK because of, I think, the whole environment around UK hip hop, but also because of this kind of 10 years of graft. But at that time, yeah, I was with the same agency as Damian.
What do you think about the whole situation?
Man, my point of view, man, I really feel like they tried to paint a bad picture on my brother and tried to make him look like he was a hater. It was some envy, jealousy type shit, you know what I'm saying? And actuality, you know what I'm saying? Bro been having this shit, man. He been in the condo.
I got my hat on and I had my Coke bottles up under my hat. And I'm sitting at the dinner table like an asshole with the hat on, knowing she gonna tell me to take it off. And I'm just sitting there just gulping down, you know, in my zone. She said, take that goddamn hat off at the dinner table. I'm like, come on, Mom. Coke everywhere.